I know what the Twins are up to. It's interesting what the Royals are up to. And holy cow, is Montreal up to something?
You are Locked On MLB, your daily MLB podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, baseball fans. Welcome to Locked On MLB, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. This is the daily podcast. We talk about all of Major League Baseball. I am your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully. I am a podcaster who's been doing this for over a decade now. And I'm beginning my sixth season here at the Locked On Podcast Network. Follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter or whatever the hell it's called now. And on Instagram, I'm your pal Sully. I'm at Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. Yep, we're doing another live feed here. I'm seeing a couple people have been bouncing in or out. If you've got any questions you want to do, put it there in the comments section. My dog is currently walking around the studio right now, and I've got one eye on her. Is she going to start barking? I don't know. Hey, by the way, let's get over one little piece of business here. Today's episode is brought to you in part by FanDuel. Make every moment more. New customers join today. You get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Visit FanDuel.com/locked on to get started. Let's also go through what the trivia question was. The trivia question was, we had on our good pal, Millard Thomas from Locked On Diamondbacks. We talk about all sorts of things Diamondbacks, all sorts of things NL West. And I asked, who was the first person to hit a home run ever for the Arizona Diamondbacks? And Scott Horstmeyer got it correct, and a couple other people got it correct. The answer was Travis Lee. Travis Lee homered off of the late Darryl Kyle. And for fans of Never Not Funny, the Jimmy Pardo podcast, you would know that Travis Lee loves the yo-yo. Now, let's just talk about a couple little things here going on. First of all, the Minnesota Twins pulled off a trade. It was either yesterday or the day before. And the trade was an interesting one. Just be patient. I'm talking about the Twins, doggy. Don't you worry about anything. They traded away Nick Gordon. And Nick Gordon has been a big prospect in their system for a long time. And he just, he's a talented player who never worked out. He had some injuries and he wasn't the superstar they thought he was necessarily going to be. He was the 5th overall pick in the 2014 draft. And lo and behold, it just didn't work out. It just sometimes happens. Or sometimes a player needs a change of scenery. I know, doggy. I don't know if you can even hear it. My dog is currently barking. But the Marlins and the Twins pulled off a trade just a year removed from the deal that sent Luis Arraez for Pablo Lopez, of which both teams wound up doing getting what they needed from that deal. Now, this could be a situation where both teams once again get what they need. Nick Gordon could very well be the type of player who could use a change of scenery and could use a chance to just be able to, have a chance to play every single day. And maybe Miami is a place for him to do that. He's another left-handed bat who is an outfielder and a shortstop and has some pop, has some stolen base ability, hasn't worked out with the Twins. Maybe a change of scenery will do him good, to paraphrase Elton John and get back Honky Cat. But who they got back was Steven Okert. Now, Steven Okert is not a superstar. No one's going to put him on the short list of Cy Young Award contenders. And last year he was only okay with Miami. However, he did strike out 73 batters in 58 2/3 innings out of the bullpen, and is a couple of years removed from some very good years with Miami. In 2019, he was pretty effective. In 2017, he wasn't very good with the Giants. He was very good in 2018. Then he got hurt. Came back with Miami in 2021 and 2022. Was a very effective reliever. This last year, his ERA was a little too high, but he had a good strikeout to walk ratio, certainly a good strikeout to innings pitch ratio. Left-handed relief pitcher, and the Twins are adding him to their pitching staff. This is coming just a little bit after Jorge Polanco, who has been a staple with the Minnesota Twins since he made his debut in 2014. Has been an all-star, hit a home run in the postseason in the division series against the Yankees in 2019, hit a home run against the Astros in this year's division series. He has been a guy who has been locked in the middle infield of Minnesota for about a decade. But his contract, he has one more guaranteed year. He has a buyout next year, and he's on the wrong end of 30. And the Twins flipped him for 1, 2, 3, 4 players. And one of the players is Justin Topa, who is a relief pitcher from the Seattle Mariners. They got him, and Topa was pretty effective last year, and as a middle reliever for the Seattle Mariners. And they also got, in the exact same deal, they wound up getting what's his name? They wound up getting Anthony DeSclafani. For some reason, Anthony DeSclafani and Jake Odorizzi get mixed up in my head. I don't know why. DeSclafani did not have a very good year last year with the San Francisco Giants, but in 2021, he had a very good year. And he's had some effective years with Cincinnati in the past. And he was sent packing to Seattle in the deal that sent Robbie Ray to the Giants. And now he's been flipped to Minnesota. So I hope no one got their Mariners Anthony DeSclafani jersey, because they're not worth much these days. Why am I bringing all this up? Because the Minnesota Twins won the division last year. And they managed to finally get that monkey off their back of when are they going to finally win a postseason game. They haven't won a postseason game since 2004. And they've been swept out of a bunch of series. And some years where they've had wonderfully talented teams and not been able to even win a single postseason game. Well, they got off the schneid and, in fact, advanced to the division series. And their reward for that was they lost Kenta Maeda to the division rival Detroit Tigers. They lost Emilio Pagan to the Cincinnati Reds. And, they lost Sonny Gray to the St. Louis Cardinals. They lost 3 quality major league pitchers off of this team. So what are they doing? I think they're doing something very smart. They're playing in a very winnable division, and they lost 3 very good major league pitchers. So let's bring in as many pitchers as possible. Let's bring in as many major league arms to make up for the fact that we've lost so many good arms in one single off season. And when you consider they still have Pablo Lopez, who's a very good pitcher. They still have Joe Ryan, who's not bad. They still have Bailey Ober, who's a major league pitcher. They still have, Louis Varland. They still have some pitchers who are quality pitchers on their team. And now they're making up for the fact, yes, they've lost some quality major leaguers, but they're at least making sure, using the Jorge Soler, Eddie Rosario rule of, if you're going to lose players, make sure you replace them with legit major leaguers. That seems to be what they're doing. And all of a sudden you look up and said, hey, the Twins have a pretty deep bullpen. And while, sure, losing Pagan and losing Kenta Maeda and losing Sonny Gray hurts, at least there's going to be someone filling in that spot. And let's face it, it's still the American League Central. The Royals aren't winning anything yet. They're going to be better, but they're not winning anything yet. The White Sox are a disaster. We don't know what the Guardians are. They could be good, they could be not good. The Tigers, I think, are going to be the most improved team, and I think probably give the Twins the biggest run for their money. But right now, the Twins are the favorite team, and they're loading their team with pitching depth, which in so many ways is the smartest thing they can do. And when you consider they flipped a a staple in their team. Polanco's been a staple in their team. He's been a starter for the last 8 years. He's an all-star. He's had a wonderful time with Minnesota, but he's probably not going to be part of the equation in a couple of years. And they got in a bunch of young players from him. They got a couple other good minor leaguers for him as well that are pretty low, be low in the minor league depth, but by the 2 or 3 years they may be top prospects. Or they just know they got a couple of major league pitchers. The Twins right now are doing the smart thing. This is their time to win the division. The division is very winnable. Pitching depth wins it, and the Twins have that, even though they've lost a bunch. So I like what they're doing. It's not as sexy, and they're probably not going to sign Blake Snell. They're probably going to sign Jordan Montgomery, although it'd be pretty cool if they did sign one of them. But they're making good, smart, short-term decisions because right now, in terms of the short term, the future has arrived in Minnesota. And if everything can click, well, they got one monkey off their back. Maybe they can try to get to their first ALCS since 2002. So right now, it's time to talk basketball. Well, maybe not so much here, but the football season is over. Basketball season has begun, and that also means it's time to keep going to FanDuel. Get your buckets in. Your first bet on FanDuel is America's #1 sports book because right now new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Bet on all your favorite NBA players and teams with quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props, and more. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot. Swish. FanDuel is the official sportsbook partner of the National Basketball Association. This is a quick reminder that Locked On has begun the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. And now you can find it on Amazon Fire TV. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find the Locked On Sports Today channel now on Amazon Fire TV. Hey, interesting thing is going to happen. You're probably listening to this on Tuesday. I'm recording this late Monday night. I'm really excited to see what's going to happen. The Royals are going to announce their unveil their new stadium plans, what they want to do for a downtown stadium. One of the great ironies is that the stadium they currently play in, Kauffman Stadium, was designed in the late 1960s. Almost every city at the time were trying to build multi-purpose stadiums. One stadium that could be used as a football and a baseball stadium. That's why you start seeing the riverfront stadiums, the Busch stadiums, and the Three Rivers Stadium, the Veterans Stadium, Atlanta Fulton County Stadium, Shea Stadium, were all these multi-purpose parks. Some of them were designed exactly the same, but with a slight movement of the stands. A football stadium could turn into a baseball stadium, and they were called the cookie cutter parks and everything like that. Kansas City did not do that. They built a football stadium, and that's designed for football, Arrowhead Stadium, and a baseball stadium. At the time, it was called Royal Stadium. It's now called Kauffman Stadium. That was designed just for baseball. And while all the other cities tore down their cookie cutter parks, Kauffman Stadium survived, at least up until now. It outlived all of the other cookie cutter parks. The irony is this: the person who fought the hardest to make sure that it wasn't a baseball stadium and football stadium combined was Charlie Finley, who was the owner of the Kansas City A's. He wanted a new ballpark for the Kansas City A's, otherwise he was going to skedaddle out of town. The proposal was a multi-purpose dome stadium in Kansas City. He said, no way. You got to make a football stadium and a baseball stadium. They did. He left anyway to Oakland, where they had a multi-purpose stadium. And as we know, the problems of the Oakland Stadium, which existed in the early 70s, lasts right to this day in this mess we have with the A's. If Charlie O just stayed in Kansas City, he would have had the stadium that became Royal Stadium for the A's. And who knows, maybe Catfish Hunter, Reggie Jackson, Joe Rudy, Raleigh Fingers, and Bert Campaneris, all who were in the organization when they were in Kansas City, maybe they would have had their dynasty in Kansas City. No one would have ever moved to Oakland, and we would never have been in this mess. I digress. But now they want to build a new ballpark in downtown Kansas City. I'm all for it, as much as I love Kauffman Stadium, and I've been to Kauffman Stadium. It's a great ballpark. It might be time to move on. It might be time to move on. So we're going to see what their plans are. But it'd be odd that the Royals, that Kansas City, who made one really wonderful stadium the A's could have played in, may come up with another wonderful stadium that the A's could play in, but it's not going to be the A's. It's going to be the Royals. Another interesting thing that's happened is that the city of Montreal is not going to demolish Olympic stadiums. Evidently, renovating it is going to cost less than destroying it. They're going to fix the roof, and they're going to replace the ring that holds the entire stadium structure together, and they're going to make some improvements for Le Stade Olympique. Why is this interesting? Because if there are improvements to the Montreal Olympic Stadium, maybe, just maybe, the city of Montreal will once again be a prime spot to put a team, maybe even the A's for that matter. Montreal is a huge city. Montreal is a good sports city. They were doomed by what happened with the strike, and they were doomed by what happened when Major League Baseball basically let the team die on the vine. But that was a long time ago. The strike was 1994. That's 30 years ago, which blows my mind because that's the year I graduated from college. But that's 30 years ago, the strike wiped out the 1994 season when the Expos were the best team in the National League and probably would have won the National League pennant. That was, if you consider the rule of 7, if you're younger than 37 years old, then chances are you have no memories of that. If you are a baseball fan in Montreal. And if that's the case, and if they left Montreal after the 2004 season, which was 20 years ago. I remember that because the year the Red Sox won the World Series. Don't know if you knew that. If you're 27 years old or younger and are a Montreal sports fan, you don't have any memory of the Expos. You have no recollection of them. You don't have the bitterness of that. You have the anger of that. And if you had a team which had a lot of momentum behind it, with the knowledge that they would only play in Le Stade Olympique for a few years, and then they would move to the eventual stadium that they would probably build downtown Montreal, a huge city, big sports city, great city. Yeah, I think that would be something worth looking towards. And by the way, I'm going to do a whole thing on this later on, but if a team moves to Montreal, I think they should be called the Expos, and all of the records for the Expos should be included for whatever team that is. I think the cities, if a team moves from a city, the records from the players of that city should remain in the city that they left. For example, Washington has had 2 teams leave them and another team arrive. But Walter Johnson, who was the greatest pitcher in Washington Senators history, his records now officially belong with the Minnesota Twins organization because that franchise that the Twins originally were the Washington Senators. I think that's crazy. I think Walter Johnson's many, many records belong in the city of Washington and the Washington Nationals. If you're a pitcher in Washington, you should be aiming for the 417 wins and the 3,509 strikeouts of Walter Johnson, and therefore make Jim Cott and Bert Blyleven be the greatest pitchers in Minnesota history. I think that the records of the New York Giants and the New York Mets should be combined, of which the greatest home run total of any National League New York hitter would be Mel Ott's 511 home runs. And don't be confused. Yes, I know Willie Mays hit 660 home runs in his career, but 400 some of them were playing for San Francisco. So if there's a team that eventually moves to Montreal or there's an expansion in Montreal, call them the Expos and make sure all the records of the Expos remain there. I was going to talk about something else, but one of our listeners named Jose Perez just gave me a little bit of news that we'll talk about in the final segment. You know what? If you're looking for tickets for big events, guess where I go to, where you should go to, and that is Gametime. Whether you're going to be going to a basketball game, hockey game, football game, baseball, we're not going to football for the rest of this year. Do you know what? Music, comedy, sports, theater events, wherever you go, that's the time to use Gametime. You shouldn't have to worry when you buy tickets to a big event. You should worry what happens at the bigger event. With killer last minute deals, all in prices, views from your seat, and the best price guarantee, Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. Do you know what? Gametime is the only ticketing app that gives you complete peace of mind with your purchase. You can see the view from the seat from the app. Like, oh, that's a good view. I think I got that. And you got all in prices with your total up front. No hidden fees. No, like, wait a minute, where did this come from? And you buy the tickets in seconds with 2 taps. And they got deals on tickets right up to the start of the event or even an hour after it starts. It's the place to find last minute deals. With zone deals, you pick the section and Gametime picks the seats for big time savings. And the Gametime guarantee means you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. That's a lot. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices. Do you know what they are? They are guaranteed. One last reminder of Locked On launching the first ever National Sports 24 streaming channel on YouTube. Now you can find it on Amazon Fire TV. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Follow the Locked On Sports Today on YouTube or on Amazon Fire TV. Hey, thanks for those of you who are joining in on the comments section. Let's hear from one of our listeners, who is Jose Perez. Just wrote to me, breaking news, Jorge Soler to the Giants on a 3-year deal. Wow. That's good for the Giants. I have made just the other day, I was saying that the Giants should go off and try to make a bunch of signings and try to add to their bats. I think they should be going after Snell. I think they should be going after Chapman. But it looks like I know nothing about it except that the tweet that you just sent me there. He's a really good home run hitter. He's obviously someone. Susan Slusser, who's as good a source as you're going to see, it says it's a 3-year deal. Yeah, and Bleacher Report is reporting it as well. Susan Slusser has been reporting it. So Jorge Soler has left the Marlins and is going to be heading off to the San Francisco Giants. There's not a lot to dislike about this if you're a Giant fan. The World Series MVP with Atlanta a few years ago. Um, big has good power, has had good power for a bunch of years. Uh, helped the Cubs win the World Series in 2016. Obviously, was the hero of the World Series for Atlanta. He led the American League in home runs in 2019. The COVID season, he was up and down, but since then, he's been a pretty steady performer and helped power the Marlins to a postseason appearance last year. And now you put him smack dab in the middle of the Giants lineup. Not a lot to dislike about that. So good for them. I still think the Giants should sign Matt Chapman. And I also think the Giants should go after one of the pitchers who are still available out there. So, well, good. That's interesting news. That's very interesting news. Timothy Firth, who's listening to me, says, will Major League Baseball award an expansion team to Montreal? I hope so. I hope so. I do think there are 4 markets that could really support a major league team. Nashville is the single biggest no-brainer. I thought if the A's were going to move, they should move to Nashville. I think Portland could support a team. I think Charlotte can support a team. I think Montreal could support a team. I got some interesting people asking me, what about San Antonio as a possibility? Maybe I haven't given, and I was asked about San Antonio. I was asked about New Orleans, mainly because those are big cities and obviously support other teams, and they're some of the only places where you could potentially field a major league team right now at the Alamo Dome in San Antonio or in the Superdome in New Orleans. Well, you can have a team in the Stade Olympique. You can refurbish the soccer stadium in Portland, which used to be the home of the Portland Mavericks for baseball. And I've been saying Omaha. You can put them in the stadium where they have the College World Series. It's just a little bit of an adaptation, and it's a city that's a reasonably large-sized city with a lot of money. But yeah, it'd be interesting. I love baseball in Montreal, and I think it'd be a lot of fun to see them back. And the fact that they're refurbishing the stadium, it's like a little flirtiness. Oh, we're just refurbishing. We're not going to tear it down. Just our baseball-ready stadium that could be a temporary place. Unlike Las Vegas, where there's no temporary place to play, there is a place. Would it be great? No. No, it won't. But it would be similar to what happened when the Nats arrived from Montreal. They played in RFK Stadium for a few years until, boom, they built a new ballpark. When they expanded the Rockies, they played in Mile High Stadium for a couple of years until, boom, here's Coors Field. Montreal remains very interesting. The fact that they're making that adaptation, well, there you go. Okay, here's a trivia question here. When you consider there have been 3 major league franchises who have played in Washington. The one that became the Twins, the one that became the Rangers, and the current one who were originally the Expos. Of those 3 franchises, which Washington hitter hit the most home runs in a Washington uniform in their career? That's the trivia question. Who's the all-time Washington home run champion? For the 3 franchises, which one who has the record? So, follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter and Instagram. I am your pal Sully. It's Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. And hey, Vic Tim, who says, love the podcast, just subscribed the other day. Thanks so much, man. And tell your friends. If you have 5 million friends, tell them all. This has been Locked On MLB. I am your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Hopefully there will be no more breaking news. I got to go to bed. My dog's already asleep in my bed, and you can call me Sully.